In at 10, Dawnbreaker. Aside from being the reward for a Daedric side quest, Dawnbreaker was expected to be an antagonist in the now cancelled Dormitibus Remastered. Dawnbreaker appears to be a heavily damaged purple mangled animatronic, the design of which was based on Shadow Freddy from FNAF 2, and presumably on the purple animatronic Hoax character. By his design, he's very similar to the Havoc animatronics. His torso is ripped and torn up, large tears exposing the endoskeleton underneath, several limbs with hooks instead of feet are sticking out of his torso and out of his head, making Dawnbreaker appear similar to a spider. And I think we all know how I feel about that. Any animatronic that looks like a spider needs to be put down and sent back to the depths of hell from whence it came. In at 9, Springlich. Springlich was a character in the Dormitibus beta. Not much was ever planned for him, and he was one of the 2 characters modeled by Golden Nexus, both of which didn't make the final cut. Springlich's body is actually turned the opposite direction to its head. This would have made it constantly walk backwards, which was actually going to be a part of its minigame. That way it was possible to make him stumble and fall, causing him to become stunned. They appear to be a Springlock victim, as they have what appears to be either blood vessels or muscles inside their suit, and they have a decaying head in their mask and only one eye. They have long strips of withering on their mask and their lower jaw is heavily worn down. Different sized holes cover the rest of their body, especially in their torso and their upper arms. And at 8, the Havoc Puppet. He is responsible for the creation of every animatronic in the game aside from one. Havoc Puppet is formed by a cracked and distorted version of the puppet's original mask, which is now missing its lower half. The head has a small hole placed right above where the mouth would be, and 2 white pinprick pupils on the inside of empty sockets, which presumably are pitch black. The lower missing half of the main mask features 7 black tentacle-like extensions, 3 at the back and 4 at the front, kinda like a weird mullet. The side 2 and the front are used as legs, while the other 2 at the front seem to be like arms, which is just all kinds of wrong. The back 3 tentacles also seem to be like tails. I don't know why those aren't the legs, but whatever. It also has a crack on the top of its head, and you know, it's wrong. Okay, it looks like a giant messed up spider, and like I said, we all know how I feel about spiders. I hate them. And at 7, Nightmare Glamrock Bonnie. Yet another set of animatronics without any Bonnie representation. The Security Breach Glamrock animatronics, from what we've seen in the trailers so far, don't have a Glamrock Bonnie. He really only appears as the mascot of bowling. However, fans here yet again made Glamrock versions of Bonnie, but those weren't really scary. So in classic FNAF fashion, if you want something to be scarier, you just throw Nightmare in front of it, and then boom, you have an unholy abomination that will eat your soul and devour your balls. Nevertheless, Nightmare Glamrock Bonnie looks exactly how you'd expect a Nightmare version of Glamrock Bonnie to look, with shoulder pads. That's the scariest part. And at 6, Nightmare Toy Bonnie. I thought that the Nightmare versions couldn't get any worse, yet here we are. I remember someone commenting on the fan versions of Chica list saying that it was more like a fan versions of Toy Chica list, but the toy animatronics are just another version of the original, so it wasn't a different list. This is a monstrosity that needs to be banished to the depths of hell and then sent by Satan from hell to like the empty because he doesn't want to deal with it. I would understand why. Like, looking this thing up, I didn't expect to be as frightened as I was, but holy ever-loving crap, this shocked me. The toy aesthetic, again, just seems to make these versions worse. I don't know what it is. It's just like the toy animatronics as nightmares just make the absolute scariest versions of the characters. I don't get it. Like, if you have any theories as to why this is a thing, like maybe like a psychological or something, I don't know, leave it in the comments. Halfway through into number 5, Nightmare Entered. The beauty of nightmare versions of animatronics is that they can really be anything. There are plenty of directions to go because everyone will consider different things to be nightmare fuel. Some are very clearly in the style of other nightmare animatronics, you know, lots of sharp teeth, stomach mouths. Some are spider-like versions that are hunched over and wider than they are long. Some have more limbs or are combined with other animatronics like Baby or Funtime Foxy to create a unique nightmare appearance. You can lean more into the clown aesthetic, or you go a million miles north and do something that nobody else has done, but that's just nightmares. That's what makes this kind of thing fun. And in doing so, you make something that not even Scott himself would have thought of. And isn't that kind of beautiful? Even if all these versions are making my currently blue pants brown, it's kind of causing me to black out a little bit. And at 4, Twisted Nightmare. The Twisted animatronics are probably the most horrific animatronics ever described. These buggers are disgusting and horrific and are only approachable when using illusion discs to make themselves look presentable. I get that. Combine that with Nightmare, who is the scariest nightmare animatronic from the games, and oh my lord, you have one hell beast. Twisted nightmare is everything you want to avoid when creating something for kids. I can hardly put it into words, honestly. Like, I'm glad that there's pictures that can be shown, because I honestly don't know how to go about describing this. If Hell's Gates had opened and released the entirety of FNAF lore into real life, and then the joy of creation animatronics emerged, including not just the ones from the game, but literally every other animatronic from the series in an ignited form, and then they all merged and became Twisted, that's half of how this demonic monstrosity would have been created. It's wrong, I feel deceived, I feel sharp objects being stabbed into my flesh. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, Havoc Chica. Do I need to explain? Havoc Chica, aka Maria, is a Havoc animatronic that hails from the Dormitivus universe. She is a Havoc version of Chica, obviously, and is a failed attempt by the Havoc puppet to give her spirit a physical form. While having the same color scheme as Chica, the two look nothing alike, alright? Not at all. The mask that Havoc Chica wears has a good amount of damage done to it. Her right eye socket has grown in size, arching upwards towards her feathers. The rest of her mask has small withering in a few places, mainly near her right eye socket and her forehead. She has no eyes at all, resulting in her being blind. Her jaw isn't directly connected to her head like Chica from FNAF 1, and instead her jaw looks more like her withered counterpart. Her jaw has withering on the sides of it and some towards the front. Her entire head is attached to a suitless limb segment, making her stick out in a way from her body. It's just grotesque and nauseating to look at. She looks like a chicken, like when they're like trying to get seeds. She looks like that. Just look at what they did to my baby. Look at how they massacred my girl, Chica. But ultimately, in at number 2, Golden Call. Golden Call is more or less like Springtrap design-wise. He's a spring-lock suit with a corpse inside of him, and he has become green due to his color rotting away. Half of Golden Call's left ear is bent, causing it to stick out in an angle. His other ear looks fairly intact, other than some slight withering on its sides. His black top hat also has some slight withering on it, mainly towards the base and sides, and he has one small hole above his right eye socket from some withering. Of course, it's withering, alright? It's withered. It's very withered, but it's not a withered animatronic. The hole also appears to be connected to his right eye socket, making it slightly bigger than normal. On the left side of his head, there's a larger hole, and he has a bit more withering on the sides of his head too, and another batch of some red substance is sticking to this section of his head, which is most likely blood or flesh or something similar. Golden Call also has a set of endoskeleton eyes in his head that have red pupils, and the eyes of his corpse are hanging out of their eye sockets and appear to be blue, which is wonderful because that means I can relate. He has slight withering on his snout, his lower jaw has been slightly degraded on the edges, and then inside there's 2 large things, okay? What organs this could be are unknown, but his entire torso is also heavily worn down, and his pelvis has a single hole in the front that it reveals like some more blood vessels, because of course it does. It's just disgusting. Finally, in at number 1, Garvey. Garvey is the Dormitivus version of Springtrap. Garvey is the penultimate antagonist in Dormitivus. As a human, he was the man who killed the missing children. He later went on to get trapped in Spring Body, becoming Springtrap, and then was burned to a permanent death in the Fazbear's Fright Fire. He looks absolutely horrific. The suit on his limbs and body are heavily tattered and shredded, and his organic remains are far more visible than they were with Springtrap or Scrap Trap. His lower jaw is deformed and broken, which it actually disappears on at least one occasion, showing Garvey's corpse mouth and jaw. Garvey now has an unnatural, animalistic-like stance, walking on all 4 of his limbs. His limbs also appear to be snapped in multiple places, alluding to these limbs being bent in unnatural ways, and the fact that his left hand serves as a foot and his left foot serves as a hand. I don't want this anywhere near my life, okay? He is also much bigger than Springtrap or any other threat in the game, okay? He's absolutely terrifying and scarier than any of the animatronics in this game or any other fan game, hands down. And he was made before the Afton name reveal, so it's not even Afton. In at 10, Withered Chica. Withered Chica is by far the most damaged of all the Junior's animatronics, which is pretty unfortunate because we all know how I feel about Chica. However, even though this is closer to the FNAF 2 look, it's closer to FNAF 2's Withered Chica with the wide jaw and missing hands. So it's not really the Chica we wanted, but also not the Chica we needed right now. It's just spooky how design will dictate everything about how terrifying or how alluring the characters are. Like, this realistic style really gives you a sense of what the hell we would be up against as Michael in the games, but also the original games have that same realistic style in a sense. I guess maybe this is for like when they lean more into the horror element come FNAF 3 and Fazbear's Fright, I guess. Because from like actual animatronic standpoint, standards, the originals seem to be more accurate to what would be possible. The Juniors cast mostly seems like they would just be suits worn by people, kind of like Avengers Campus. And by the way, only 16% of people who watch these videos are actually subscribed. You might have watched multiple videos and not know that you aren't subscribed, okay? So check out and see if you are, and if you're not, click subscribe, okay? Hi, I see you, New York. Everyone from New York, click subscribe right now. And at 9, Withered Marionette. Holy sweet baby Jesus, what the actual hell is this monstrosity? In the final act of the game, Marionette's face gets shattered, which leaves cracks all over the faceplate of the animatronic, and honestly, it makes it my sleep paralysis demon. Like, I don't actually get sleep paralysis, but if I did have sleep paralysis, I promise you, this would be the demon that I see in my blind spot. This thing has bloodshot eyes, the cracks reveal a gross underside that is definitely not the fabric of the actual animatronic like we would assume, and honestly, it's just all kinds of wrong. Like, what the actual hell? Why do you think that this is a good idea? If this is supposed to be a Freddy's location with a name based off of Midnight Motorist, why are you putting in animatronics that can scare even my grown, albeit a little bit of a pansy, adult? Why would kids think that these are fun to play with? I've seen kids that are literally scared of puddles and snails, but apparently they're fine with these freaks. And by the way, the snails were normal ones, not immortal ones, so there was no reason to be scared. And at 8, the Mangle. The Mangle from Juniors is nothing like the Mangle from FNAF 2. Trust me. This time around, Mangle is giant, since the ghost haunting the restaurant ended up building Mangle as her final form, in a sense. Basically, just a Megazord but animatronic animal, using pieces of the different animatronic endoskeletons to create basically Creation from Joy of Creation but FNAF 2 themed, and then during the final act, all of the animatronics actually, I'll let you figure that one out for yourself, because straight up it's absolutely terrifying. And if you have seen someone play it and you've seen the ending through them, or maybe even you've played it for yourself, you'll know why this is just a frickin' monster. However, since it's not in the game for all that long, we're gonna put it up higher on the list, because I got a lot of things to complain about and only so long to do it. And at 7, Molten Evil. Molten Evil is basically the shadow body of Dormitibus. It was a Springlock victim, and it is heavily implied to be related to RWQFS FASXC. Molten Evil is a pure black animatronic rabbit that is melted. They look very similar to Toy Bonnie, and it's most likely meant to be Shadow Bonnie. Molten Evil looks close to what Toy Bonnie looks like, but with some key differences. He is entirely black, and appears to have a grimy looking texture to them. His eye sockets are filled with a white color and a white substance, which is most likely plasma. Get your mind out of the gutter, which is actually also seeping out from their eyes, and it's running down their face a la Crying Child, which hadn't actually been introduced yet, interestingly enough. All of his teeth are glowing a bright white, and so is his bow tie, and his bow tie, however, has melted slightly, making it lose its original shape. Don't all these animatronics just seem friendly to you? And at 6, Havoc Freddy. Havoc Freddy is a distorted manifestation accident, both from Havoc Puppet, who attempted to make a physical body for the spirits in Purgatory from plasma. When alive, the spirit's name was Ted. Get it? Ted became Fred? Never mind. Havoc Freddy bears a slight resemblance to his real counterpart, but for the most part looks very different. He mainly consists of a slightly dark brown color scheme, and he has a giant hole in the right side of his mask, revealing a large portion of his endoskeleton. His right eye hangs out of this hole by a few wires, consisting mainly of a black color with a red pupil. His left eye has a blue color to it, like his real counterpart. His eyebrows look rather large, with his right one just missing a small amount of itself. And his top hat appears to be just fine, though it may have some slight damage done to its base. A 2-segment long arm is connected to the left side of his head, with it wearing no suit on it, and the hand for the arm appears to be missing a finger segment, and it's also holding a microphone. Havoc Freddy doesn't have a suit for his lower jaw, and his entire jaw is just hanging low, wobbling to and fro by just a couple wires, and the rest of his body is just destroyed, which makes it extremely unsettling. Halfway through it at number 5, the BOA. The BOA, otherwise known as the Box of Abominations, is a nickname that I gave my sister. Just kidding. It's an animatronic hybrid from the same game that makes us all beg for death. Haha, yeah. The main head for the BOA belongs to Toy Freddy. He has no ears connected to his head, and his top hat has a few holes in it, resulting in wires poking out. Toy Freddy has a small small hole right above his right eye socket and a slightly bigger hole on the right side of his head. He's missing his right eye and his right eye socket has melted slightly. His remaining eye is pure white along with his iris. He has no eyelids and neither do any of the other heads. Yeah, that's right, this one has multiple. Both his upper jaw and lower jaw have melted along with his cheeks. This has also caused his endoskeleton jaw to be revealed more, even when his jaw is closed. In at 4, Soul Cage. The Soul Cage is an animatronic from Dormitibus and it resembles a lamp that has 4 heads of Freddy, Foxy, Bonnie, and Chica. Basically, it's an animatronic based on the bad ending from FNAF 3. The Soul Cage is made up of some props from Fazbear's Fright. The base of the Soul Cage is Bonnie's torso, with Bonnie's head being connected to it. Chica's head is connected to the left side of the main torso by a metal rod, and on the right side of the main torso is Freddy's torso, which is being connected to the main torso by 2 metal rods. Freddy's torso is tilted to the side, making him stick out, and Freddy's head is connected to his torso as well, luckily. Foxy's head is connected to the main torso by a rather long metal rod, which is actually coming out of the back, which is weird, and Foxy's head is positioned right above Bonnie's head. Each head that the Soul Cage has contains a single light source in their left eye socket. Each head also has large sharp teeth in their jaw, because of course they do. They had to have something more, right? Like, it wasn't enough to just have 4 heads. You have to make them have razor sharp teeth too. They also have a grimy looking texture to them, which may be a reference to the fire at Fazbear's Fright, but can't be certain because I didn't design the character. Freddy, Bonnie, and Foxy also don't have their ears anymore, and there's 4 robotic legs because why the hell not? But ultimately, in at number 2, Withered Foxy. Just like with the rest of the withered animatronics, Foxy was destroyed in the final act of the game. But in this chaos, he ended up losing his right ear, and the game makes it clear that his damage is actually the least noticeable since he was already damaged to begin with. And honestly, while the visual difference may not be that different, the way I relate to not changing much after being even more damaged is so much that it's scary. Yes, it's confirmed, I am Junior's Withered Foxy. My damage control shampoo is not helping, I'm still broken on the inside, but I was already broken before, so it's not as noticeable, and I wish that was a joke. But seriously, when I tell you that the past few years have been insane, I am not kidding. And that single line in the extras menu of his appearance is the least noticeable, as Foxy was withered to begin with, hit so close to home that it was terrifying, but also kind of uplifting in a way, at least if I look at it through the lens of I'm strong enough now that what would have broken someone else was hardly noticeable on me, and not the whole you're so damaged that people can't even tell when it gets worse kind of way. But you know what, that's why I have Blade and Sorcery to channel that frustration. Better than real people. Or at least that's what the lawyer said. And finally, in at number 1, the Ghost. The Ghost is the main antagonist of Junior's, and while I guess technically they're not an animatronic, they're the one responsible for everything that's happening. So in a way, they're all the animatronics. And plus, as I said, they end up becoming Mangle in the end, so I'm gonna count it. Basically, the Ghost is meant to be the vengeful spirit from Ultimate Custom Night. The Ghost seems to have a very strong connection to Paul Bear and wants to erase him during the final act of the game, and as to whether she is able to accomplish this goal or not is up to you to find out, motherfucker. Yeah, I've already talked about the final act and how it damaged the animatronics, but I'm not going to spoil literally the ending of the game for you. The main difference I see here, however, is that in Ultimate Custom Night, the one referred to as the one you should not have killed is meant to be Crying Child, but whether the vengeful spirit is the same as the one you should not have killed or not is a whole other question. Here, the Ghost is in it for themselves, for their own sense of justice, but if the one you should not have killed and the vengeful spirit are the same, then this couldn't be the same character, just the same concept. And yes, I said that because I know it's gonna make a decent amount of you mad, and I just find that funny. And at 10, Nightmare Funtime Freddy. Well, what did you expect? Of course, a nightmare version of Funtime Freddy is going to be on this list. It's basically like a requirement for any animatronic list, because Funtime Freddy is probably one of the creepiest and weirdest versions of them all. Nightmare Funtime Freddy is what you'd guess, in essence a recolored Nightmare Fredbear, actually. Instead of Nightmare Freddy, which I guess is understandable, but the real gem comes from when they make the Nightmare version look like the classic, like, plastic toy look that the original Funtimes have. Because I don't know why, but for some reason the Nightmare aesthetic with like the toy look of the Funtimes just makes it absolutely horrifying from both fronts. At this point, I never want toys again, but I'm going to buy various pop figures. I also am going to have nightmares about this version eating other Nightmare animatronics. Like, I think he was doing it to save me, like a Glam Rock Freddy situation, but like still, okay? He could snatch me up without a fight. He could rip me in two. Nightmare Funtime Freddy, that's not where your teeth go. In at 9, Nightmare Baby. Originating in the fan game Baby's Nightmare Circus, I believe, or just being the basis for it, Nightmare Baby is pretty damn spooky. Being the likely originator for the stomach mouth present on the other Nightmare animatronics already made the thought of her as a nightmare terrifying, but throw in the classic Nightmare rundown aesthetic again despite being a plastic casing, like with Nightmare Funtime Freddy, and the countless sharp teeth in the animatronic mouth, this thing will make you see stars. Oh, and adding the Nightmare look to animatronics that can already move their face was bad enough. But thinking about it or actually seeing their face move and like reveal a Nightmare endoskeleton is even worse. In at 8, Nightmare Toy Chica. Nightmare Toy Chica is honestly what you'd expect from a Nightmare version of your favorite chicken robot. Not robot chicken, chicken robot. All the glory of Toy Chica with the horror of a nightmare, the countless sharp teeth, the stomach mouth, torn body even though they're a toy in plastic so it doesn't really make any sense, it should just be cracked. Exposed endoskeleton, you name it, she's got it. She's got it going on. And those without a beak are even worse than you'd expect. You'd expect that without the beak there would be less teeth, but no. In fact, they have the same amount of teeth and they're just ready to bite your head off. If anyone was going to have caused the bite of 87, it would be Nightmare Toy Chica, and not just because of the ultimate custom night line, okay? That's a can of worms that we've already covered in multiple videos. In at 7, Balloon Baby. This iteration of Balloon Boy isn't a boy at all. He's actually a baby, hence the name Balloon Baby. This time around though, his face is a lot more doll-like to kind of capture the eerie vibe that Balloon Boy has, and as always, he's holding balloons and has his iconic propeller hat. Can't believe that's iconic at this point. That's how the game extras menu describes him though, but do you want to know how I describe it? Wrong on so many levels. Balloon Boy doesn't have an eerie vibe, okay? He's just a freaking weirdo. The dude looks like he sniffs people's calves after they do their jog. Like, what the hell? He's creepy, but in a perv kind of way, not actually like scary or threatening. I don't get that thing. But even then, okay? Turning that into a baby makes it even worse. It's like if Chuck E. Cheese was actually built for Chucky the Killer Doll. Why? What the hell? Okay, whose baby looks like this? Because I'm sorry. Because this thing is ugly as hell. I'm just saying. I have yet to see an actually properly cute baby. In at 6, Chica the Chicken. As described by their extras menu, this iteration of Chica is not themed around food, but sleeping. She dons a nightgown, sleeping cap, and her cupcake has a binky. How adorable. I'm sorry, adorable? Look at this damn thing. Chica was my main girl, now you've desecrated her like a freaking monster. This is goddamn terrifying. And then you made her themed for sleeping, but still give her a cupcake? Why? What is she gonna, like what? Is she gonna be the daycare attendant when this world opens its own deranged form of the Pizzaplex? I mean, don't get me wrong, I hate Mazercise just as much as the next guy, but I don't want my girl to be sleeping when all the fun things we can do require being awake. And just look at her! How could you do this to my dummy thick mommy princess? What the hell, man? Juniors? Ain't no way there's gonna be a Junior Connor running around if that's what Chica looks like. Jesus! Halfway through it at number 5, Withered Freddy. While the Withered Freddy from the original series has a questionable backstory, like what caused them to be so withered if they're just not being used, in Juniors, the final act sees Freddy being torn to shreds, leaving him with only one eye and a massive scar down the right side of his face. So at least we know how he ended up withered instead of just having to assume that over time, without being used at all, normal Withered Freddy just kind of wore down, which in reality, now that I'm thinking about it, doesn't really make sense. But this one explains it, so you know what, I like this version better. Story-wise, at least, because in reality, this thing looks absolutely terrifying and is probably going to make me cry, and then wake up 3 times throughout the night because I'm scared, instead of Glamrock Chica, who would wake me up for other reasons. Which is why I find it ironic that this version of Chica is themed for sleep. Anyway, back to Freddy. It's just off-putting, man, okay? He looks like he's smirking, he looks like he's giving you the me eyes, but instead it's like the F you without asking eyes, okay? You know what I mean. It's just overall creepy as hell, and I don't like it. In at 4, Withered Balloon Baby. If you thought normal Balloon Baby was bad because he wanted to sniff your crack after a 15-hour movie marathon, Withered Balloon Baby wants to do that, but also wants to fill your crack up with, well, you get the idea. This man wants the term your crack to be a little more than just your cheek separation. He's the kind of person that after that 15-hour movie marathon with no bathroom breaks is gonna start doing lines off the sweatiest parts of your body. Starting with the good old sweaty swamp, and then after that's been looted of all the good gear, the boys are dropping at Lint Lake. And then, well, you get the idea. It goes on after that. And then, once he's finally done, and then he's had the other half of his porcelain face destroyed by Satan's snow, you'll finally be able to use the bathroom. But he won't be letting you go alone, okay? That's the kind of creep that this thing is. And the reason I compared him to Chucky is because he's possessed by an adult serial killer in that movie, and I feel like this monstrosity would be as well. Plus, it makes it a little less creepy, in the eyes of the jury. Who's watching this video right now. Hi guys. Not guilty, by the way. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Nightmare Springtrap. Nightmare Springtrap is certainly a sight. Not for sore eyes though, no. If anything, this is going to make your eyes sore. However, every iteration of Nightmare Springtrap basically does the same thing. He gets the classic nightmare teeth, but the rest of him remains largely the same. Maybe he gets a slight change to his ears or his skull shape, but other than that, Nightmare Springtrap is mostly just regular Springtrap. The majority of people believe that Springtrap is already scary, and he already has most of the appearance of a nightmare animatronic, being one of the most destroyed characters in the games, and especially in FNAF 3. One version I saw had like eyes covering all of him, but for the most part he looked either Springtrap or just like a larger fetch, but still terrifying. And finally, in at number 1, Hellmare. This was another animatronic that was recommended to me, this time in the comments of part 1 of alternate fan versions of Fredbear, and I can see why. The Hellmare version of Nightmare Fredbear is probably the absolute single most horrific FNAF-oriented thing I have ever seen. Like, I'm going to have to make a whole list about the Hellmare animatronics or something, because this is the absolute craziest shit that I have ever seen. How did I not know about these before? Hellmare Fredbear can only be described as a true nightmarish abomination from hell, and so the name is accurate. This thing had not one, not 2, but 3 separate mouths, 2 heads. But not only does it have 2 heads, those heads are reversed from one another. So the head on top and the one on the bottom, they spin 180 degrees, and you either get Nightmare or you get Nightmare Fredbear. Yeah, this dude is both animatronics combined. And I didn't even see that at first. Once I noticed it, I'll admit, I might have peed my pants a little bit, okay? Come on, 2 heads, 2 sets of 4-fingered hands, and half of these parts being Nightmare, and half of them being Nightmare Fredbear. Look, I'm not usually actually scared when it comes to these things. I play it up for the camera and for entertainment, and that's why I'm so, like, light and fluffy on camera. Like, yes, they're scary, but I'm not actually worrying about them. I'm not playing this up. This is probably going to actually give me nightmares. Like, what kind of hell-raising sadistic motherfucker came up with this idea?